Hi, Annie. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Hi, thanks for having me. That was a lot of fun. I love that game.
Well, it gets us in the mood, right? I mean, that's part of our book club. We start with the name game, find out what everybody's reading, watching, listening to, gets us into the mood, right?
Yes.
Yes. Well, for some of our readers who are new to you, can you tell us how you got into writing and a little bit more about yourself?
Well, can you hear me first of all? I haven't make
Yes.
sure my mic's okay. I've been writing since I was a kid, so I don't really know how I got into it. It's just something that I naturally navigated towards. Like I can remember being 6 years old and trying to write poems and just writing stories. So it's just evolved ever since I was a child. But when I became 20, that's when I decided, hey, I'm going to write my first novel. And so I sat down and I like plotted it out and wrote my first novel. And then I started getting, books, how-to books and just querying agents and just, it's a long road. There's a lot to learn. And it took me many, many years to get published.
And what type of writing did you start with? Did you start in romance and did you start with small town? I mean, how did that evolve?
Yeah, no, well, when I was a kid, I read a lot of the Fear Street kind of books, like the R.L. Stein. And so whenever you're reading something like that, you want to try to write it. So I tried to write some kind of stories like that. And, then I got into romance in high school, like Danielle Steele and Susan Elizabeth Phillips. And I was, really love Nicholas Sparks. And I started writing more romantic fiction. And then when I looked for a writers group that was local, the only one I could find was the Romance Writers of America, like the small group that they have in every state. And so I started going to that group, and then that really just confirmed or solidified me going into romance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And also looking at a lot of your books, they are the small town. I mean, that's a common thread. So what about that? And what do you find appealing about the small town type romances?
Well, that's all I know. I haven't been to a lot of cities, as an adult I have, because when I joined the Romance Writers of America, then they started having, that's the only places that I've really traveled to. I'm a small town girl. I'm a hometown girl. So I didn't really see any cities until I was in my 20s. And small town is exactly what I know, and it's what I love, and kind of like that Hallmark feel. There's small towns all surrounding me, and I'm just really drawn to it. I think it's the notion of everybody knowing everybody in a small town is very romantic in and of itself.
So when you're creating those towns, since you're pulling inspiration from the small towns you've been to or those that you're familiar with, do your readers recognize things, or the people say, hey, wait a second, I know where you got that particular story, or that doesn't quite match up? I mean, again, how are you building some of that?
Well, my small towns that I create are completely fictional. So I might take qualities of certain towns around me and kind of mix them together, or add this quality that I like to this. Like I make my own town. That way nobody can come back and say that's not accurate. Because, I write fiction. So my towns are fictional, and that makes it kind of fun, because then you can have the quirks and the rules and all the things about the town that you want.
And that's the thing I always love about the small town romances too, are those quirks. And a lot of times those secondary characters that you're like, okay, they might not be the leading main hero or heroine, but man, they're just so entertaining when you come across them, right?
Yeah. That's one of the things I love about small towns. Those secondary characters that just have that quirkiness, like, the town gossip. I have a town gossip in my series that I'm writing right now, and she has like a blog, and just the quirky things about the people. The sheriff, and the person who owns the market, and it's a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. So I was at another conference recently, and they were talking about like how many grocery stores are in your small town, right?
Yeah.
And the number kind of varied they're like, oh, well, yeah, there's a lot, to one of the authors saying, I don't think there actually is a grocery store. Yeah, I need to look at that a little bit.
Yeah. No, I have a grocery store. I always have one grocery store. There might be more, but if there are, that's not the one that I'm talking about. I only have one.
And one of the other elements that I really loved in this was the book club aspect of it, and at the actual bookshop too.
Yeah.
And that was such an important part also for the lead character, was the having that book club. Other inspiration or the
No,
what was behind that?
yeah, I'm not a part of a book club. I kind of romanticize people who are in a book club. I think that's like so cool. And to have like friends who love books, and then you can also talk about other things. I kind of live vicariously through my books and my characters. So, I would love to be a part of a book club that gets together and does that kind of thing. So, obviously my characters do it, and I live vicariously through them. I think it's a lot of fun. It's something that happened.
Mhm.
They had the book club, and I didn't really realize when I was forming the thing that, they were going to be the characters.
Mhm.
It took like until the end of the first book writing it that like, oh, well, these are my characters. They all go to the book club, and that's perfect.
Mhm. And the other fun aspect too is with the bookshop. And I saw on Facebook you had a lot of readers posting pictures of some of their local bookshops and places that they've liked to go. And all of us on here are, avid book readers. We all have the favorite things out of different bookshops that we're always looking for, from the small to the large ones. How
Yeah.
fun was that, being able to design your own bookshop essentially?
Oh yeah, that's fun. That's a lot of fun. Because I think that would be my dream job. I've told my husband that so many times. Like, I could write my books behind the counter. I could sell books and write books and drink coffee. At the bookshop would have to have coffee. And maybe a cat. So I didn't add those things to this bookshop, but if it was my bookshop, I think I'd have a cat.
Hey, I'm a cat person, so I am completely on board with that. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a cat and a dog person, but if it's a bookshop, I think you have to have, well, you could have a cat and a dog. Yeah.
Depends on the two, right?
Yeah. Well, see, it's fun. Yeah. You asked how fun it is. It's a lot of fun designing your own bookstore.
And I've just really enjoyed seeing the photos that people have been posting about all of their unique bookstores in their neck of the woods.
Yeah. And I'm happy to see that there's a lot of bookstores out there. Cause like in my town, we don't have an indie bookstore. Like, I'd have to drive an hour out to see all the, the local bookstores. Cause it's hard to compete with the big bookstores and with Amazon.
Mhm.
So it's nice to see that those bookstores are thriving and there to go to. Because I'd much rather go to a little tiny bookstore that's quirky and has the cat and the dog and the coffee.
Well, tell us a little bit about the inspiration behind Tess and River.
Well, Tess, this is book 3. So, and I had a novella as well with one of the characters. So I knew Tess was coming up, and I already knew from book 1 that she owned the bookstore. And I knew she was a widow because I put that in book 1, but I didn't really know her story. I don't usually know the story. It's not solidified until I sit down to start writing that character's story. So it just, it's a lot of, what's going on with Tess, what happened to her husband, asking yourself a lot of questions when you're writing, and which leads you to, he died, and, the hero is this former best friend of her husband that, is also an enemy because they had a big fight, a big blowout when he tried to stop the wedding. So you just kind of,
It's always a bit awkward, right? I mean, come on.
yeah. Yeah. But I mean, I loved, as I was writing the story, I loved the love story between Tess and River. It was almost like, yes, she loved her ex-husband or her late husband, but River was her soulmate. Like, he was always her soulmate. Like, he fell in love with her from the very first moment he saw her, and she had feelings for him too, even though she had this fiance. It just felt like it was an inevitable relationship, like it was their time. They needed to find their love. I really enjoyed writing their story.
And how do you balance the angst? Because anytime you have a widow situation, right, and you're dealing with those past emotional feelings, but you're still now in the midst of the new love story, and even if they always had feelings, it's like, how do you achieve that right balance? And how do you get in the right mindset for each set of cases?
Yeah. Well, That's a hard one. I always think it's hard when you have a widow, because you have to make sure they're far enough removed from that last relationship where they've done a lot of healing, a lot of inner work. Like for Tess, she's been journaling. She's like, starting to look up taking out hiking and getting a dog. Like she's starting to move on with her life. So she's at that point where she's looking for something new. She's ready for a relationship. And then of course, if you're a romance writer, you're going to give her the last person she would ever want to fall for, like the very last person. And so that's when you pull in the best friend, because you got to have that angst. Because even though she's ready to move on and, she's put that to rest, it's not going to be easy to move on with your late husband's former best friend who ruined your wedding. Yeah.
But I think that's also what the readers are looking for, right? It's taking us from those highs and lows and the humorous elements and, really giving that full package to the story.
Yeah. And you get a better payoff, because if they were perfect for each other and they knew it and there was no conflict, I mean, the payoff's really not there for the writer either. I need the payoff. Like if I'm going to write 85,000 words or 88,000 words, it's got to be a good payoff for me too.
Mm-hmm. And what about this is where I sometimes get hung up on and start thinking, how are the writers handling this? Are those different elements where they're going on a road trip and they're also investigating everything? So how do you keep some of those different elements straight, even to the details of, okay, and again, from a practical standpoint, from even a road trip, it's like always, my thing is, where are the bathrooms, right? And, you got to make sure that they're not in the car too long and that you have the necessary stops, right?
Yeah. Well, this is fiction, so they have incredibly large bladders, and so does the dog that went with them. And they can make it all the way without stopping. Because I don't think I addressed that at all, but it's fiction. I'm sure they did a detour at some point off the page.
It's just not glamorous to stopping and getting the gas and everything that's related to that.
But you do have a copy editing, like the copy editor will get in there after you've done several revisions, and then the copy editor gets a hold of it. And depending on who you will have a copy editor say, hey, wait, what about this? Don't you have to take the dog out to the bathroom? They're very practical.
Right. So, like you did let the dog out of the car. You need to make sure the dog gets back into the car. Yes.
Yes. You left the dog in the car all night. We got to fix that.
Well, I also want to ask you about the Matchbreaker Summer. I know we're talking about the True Love Bookshop tonight, but I have to say, when that came out earlier this year, I mean, that it really caught my attention, and it's YA. For those who aren't as familiar with it, what was entailed with your getting into that mindset for YA novels? Because that's your first YA book, right?
Yeah. It was a lot of fun. It's a different voice. So my adult romance is third person point of view. So it's he and she and, alternating point of views between the male and female. But this one, I went first person point of view. So like from her perspective, I didn't have another point of view. It was hers solely for the entire book. It was just very, very different, which I think allowed me to play around with a new voice, because I didn't use the same voice that I would use, my author voice, for my adult romance. And I think it was a lot of fun, and it came very naturally. But like I was experimenting with a new voice inside my head, so it was a lot of like playtime for me.
Well, it just seemed like such a fun concept.
Yeah. The book basically wrote itself. That concept came to me very quickly. Like, you have like basically the pitch, she's trying to, her mom and her stepdad to be are going to get married, and they're going to sell this camp. So she teams up with this boy that she hates at first, but then gets a crush on, to break them up. Because if she breaks them up, they don't have to sell the camp. They don't have to move. And once you have that pitch, I mean, that book basically just wrote itself. Like, oh, you have like a camp going on, and you're like trying to break up this mom and stepdad. And it was a lot of fun. Lots of shenanigans.
Do you think you're going to do more YA books?
I would like to, but I don't know if it's all writers, but a lot of us, we want to write suspense and thrillers, and like you just want to write everything. So right now I have so many deadlines that adult romance and women's fiction, because I'm also releasing my first women's fiction next year.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Well, tell
So
us about that.
that one's it's a Christmas book. It's coming out September of 2023, and it's a time loop story. So it's kind of like Groundhog's Day at Christmas, and she's trying her husband got into an accident. He's in a coma, and she's trying to repeat that day to stop him from going into the coma.
Oh,
And
wow.
to wake him up by Christmas.
Uh-huh.
So it was a lot of fun. A
Now,
little magical.
again, I mean, just getting into the different mindsets for each of those, because the writing styles are different with each of those types of genres. I mean, going from YA and the things that you typically can or can't do in that style of writing to what readers expect in a romance versus
Yeah.
the women's fiction. Do you
Yeah.
find that hard to go back and forth, or do you have to stay focused on just one as opposed to the other?
I didn't really find it too hard, because they were such vastly different stories. And like with the YA, there was a whole different voice with the first person point of view. What was hard is that for my first women's fiction, I decided to go with a time loop story, which is way harder than I would have imagined. Like I didn't realize that would be so hard. But it was worthwhile. There's a payoff, because you work really hard and you're like, oh, this is hard. Why did I do this? And then like, you're banging your head and you're thinking about it constantly. And then when it starts to piece itself together and it comes out and it's like this great, so much better than it was, there's a huge payoff.
Mhm.
Emotionally, it's like, oh, I did it. This,
Right.
yeah.
Do you ever find yourself getting writer's block?
I do a
Mhm.
lot. But I don't know if it's full writer's block. I get there where I sit a lot and like, oh, I don't know what's going to happen next, because I'm half plotter, half pantser. And the pantser, like I go off on a tangent and I don't really know what's going on. And that's when the writer's block happens, because I've written myself into a corner. So then I have to sit back and think, what's going to happen next. And yeah, it works itself out this, within a day.
I'm also curious on the plotter versus pantser and how that works then with some of your series, even though the books are standalone, but they're kind of still around that same world.
Yeah.
Do you have multiple books planned out with a general idea for each of those? Or
No.
Is it 100% pantser once you really kind of get into it as to, okay, this is going to be the next story. Now I have to figure out what's going on.
Like say for the first book of Somerset Lake, I introduced all the book club women and I gave like the tiniest little detail of each one. And that's all I knew until I got to their story. So for Tess in True Love Bookshop, I knew she was a widow and that she owned her own bookshop. That's pretty much all I knew about her, and until I started writing her book, because then I had to start asking the questions. Where did her husband go? What happened to him? Why does she own the bookshop? And
right.
That's how the story kind of comes up.
Okay. Well, Annie, I want to switch over to our fresh fiction facts. Now, these are quick questions. Don't need a lot of thought, and it covers a wide variety of different topics. And I'm going to start off an easy one, actually, because you were saying earlier that, as writers, you want to kind of hit all these different areas. Is there a particular genre that you really, really want to write in?
Well, the women's fiction was the genre. Like I really, really wanted that. So is that, because I've already written one, but is that okay to say that? Okay.
Yeah. What's your favorite trope to write?
Ooh, I love second chance. I love second chance.
What's your favorite trope to read?
Ooh, I still love second chance. I'm a second chance girl.
So
like
with the
enemies
second
too.
chances, oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But with those second chances, do you picture second chance when they're older characters or more younger?
Yeah. Usually it's like a high school sweetheart that fell apart and comes back like in the 30s. Yeah.
Gotcha.
And I'm a big trope mixer. So I do a lot of enemies, second chance, like you mix them.
Hey, we're all for that. Don't worry.
Yeah.
So Sometimes
Way
the more
more
you
fun.
can throw in there, the better, right?
Yeah.
What genre do you never want to read again?
Ooh. Genre do I never want to read again? I don't know. I don't.
You love them all, huh?
Oh, you know what? I'm not a big historical. It's
Ah.
hard for me. It makes me think too much.
Mm-hmm. So
Yeah.
pretty much like all different history eras, or?
I mean, it's not that I never want to read it again, but that's like not the one I'm going to pick up.
Yeah, gotcha. What's your favorite writing fuel?
Coffee.
What is your favorite activity when you are trying to avoid writing?
Ooh. Yeah, I do that a lot. I clean. I've picked up gardening this summer. So for the first time, I get up and start gardening like I need to be doing that instead of working on my deadlines. But never cooking. Cooking's just not. Yeah.
Who was your first book boyfriend or girlfriend?
Ooh, okay. I think it's going to be the Nicholas Sparks book. What's it called? A Walk to Remember. I loved him. Was his name Landon? I think his name was Landon.
Yes. I remember the actor was Shane West.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the first one that I remember.
Him. Yes.
Yeah.
Who would be your dream, right? Who would be your dream writer collaboration?
Ooh, okay. Well, I really love Catherine Center. So her books, I really love her books. I really love Christina Lauren as well, or Christina Lauren. I don't know how you say. Yeah. I love them.
Awesome.
Yeah. Or Rand Thane. I'm a big Rand Thane.
Oh.
Yeah.
See, any of those would be awesome. I agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
Who would you most want to be stuck with in an elevator with?
Ooh. Oh, that's hard. I don't know.
Never said these were easy. I said they were quick.
In an elevator with. I've already been stuck in elevators with Ray and Thane and like them, at the conferences that we used to go to. So I don't know. And I've even seen Nicholas Sparks at in New Bern at, I forget what, Panera Bread. So I don't know. That's too hard. I can't think of that one.
Okay. All right. Might circle back, give you some time on it then. What luxury item is an absolute necessity for you?
Hell, these are hard questions. I don't know, because I'm not a very luxury girl. I would, what luxury item? I guess coffee. Is that a luxury item? A coffee? Okay.
Yeah.
Because I have to have,
especially depending on the type of coffee. I mean, are you a Starbucks girl?
No.
Regular coffee at home, huh?
Yeah.
Well,
yes, yeah. I'm not very luxurious. I'm boring. I do have a luxurious laptop, though. I have the Mac, and that is a huge luxury. Like, when I got the Mac.
Well, and that's almost a necessary tool when you're writing.
Yeah.
Correct. I mean, got to do what you need to on that.
Right.
What is the most terrible movie that you legitimately enjoy?
That I legitimately enjoy?
Mm-hmm.
I thought you were going to say that I didn't enjoy, and I can think several I didn't enjoy. I don't know, like, would Game of Thrones count? Because that was like amazing and awesome, and I enjoyed it, but it was also like pretty violent. Like, it depends on what you mean by terrible. I mean, it was terrible in some senses, yes.
But I got sucked into watching that. They were doing an all-day marathon this weekend, and as I'm doing various things around the house, I'm like, okay, even though I've seen this, I'm just going to have it on again, and
yeah,
wasted a lot of time that way.
Yes.
Now I know you have 3 boys.
I have 2 boys and 1 girl.
You have 2 boys, I think. Oh, okay. So 2 boys and a girl. What childish thing do you still do as an adult? And it could be with the kids or even on your own.
that I still do as childish thing. I mean, because I have the kids, I have to do a lot of childish things. I don't enjoy a lot of them. Like I don't enjoy playing dolls, even though I have to. But there's like, that Velcro mitt that you have. There's like, you have a Velcro mitt and a ball,
yeah.
and you like throw it back and forth. Like I buy those just for myself and make the kids play with me. Like that's like the best. Cause I feel like I'm not athletic at all. If you can catch the ball when you got a Velcro mitt.
Yeah, I was going to ask, is that because of a lack of coordination that you've got to do the Velcro one?
I'm really good with the Velcro mitt.
What new hobby or activity did you pick up during the pandemic?
Well, I just picked up gardening this summer, but I don't think that counts as during the pandemic. And I will say during the pandemic, I just worked on writing. And I guess I would say I picked up new genres because that's when I picked up, okay, I'm going to write young adult. Okay, I'm going to write, women's fiction. So I did jump into some new genres.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
What is your favorite errand on your day off?
I don't like errands at all. So I don't have a favorite. Like if I have a day off, I prefer not to leave the house at all. So I'll do like, cleaning and stuff as far as chores, but I don't have, if my day off, I don't want to leave the house.
What do you own a ridiculous amount of?
Ooh. Books.
I think a few of us can probably relate to that one.
Yeah. Like that's really the only thing I own a ridiculously amount, and notebooks, because I have like stacks of notebooks of all different types. Just to write ideas down.
Do you prefer like spiral notebooks or flip notebooks, or?
I have them all.
I
have them all. And then if my kids like abandon a notebook, I steal it and claim it as mine, even though I already have like dozens. It's mine.
And do you end up saving certain notebooks for like a special occasion?
I don't. I just have stacks and I choose my, the one for the day. And
how often are you going through them then?
I don't.
You just move from like notebook to notebook?
I do. And I write the stuff down and think it's so important. And then I just never really go back to it. So it's very rare that I go back to it. But, I have the ideas. So I'm like coming up with ideas and writing down thoughts. And so I have it. And then I just bring it to my computer.
Oh, okay. Well, that was going to be my next question. I mean, do you look back at your notebooks and realize, hey, here was the start of an idea?
Yeah.
And then you're like, wait a second, what was I actually thinking? And does it get captured somewhere else later then?
Yeah, I'll pick up a notebook trying to find the next blank page and I'll be like, oh, look at that, or that's when I was writing Tess and River. Yeah, so it's fun. I just hope my kids never get a hold of it.
Uh-oh.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Well, Annie, how can our readers stay in touch with you?
Well, I'm on social media. So for Facebook and Instagram and TikTok, all of it's the same. So Annie Rains Books. Pretty easy. Okay. And then my website's annierains.com.
And you were telling us about the women's fiction. So what is the next thing that our readers can look forward from you?
Let's see. The next thing, I have to think. Okay, The Christmas Village came out at the end of last year. It came out in trade, so it's being re-released as mass market this Christmas. And then the True Love Bookshop is being re-released as mass market in January. So that'd be fun. And then the next original new book is coming out in March, and that's The Good Luck Cafe, which is book 4 in the series.
4 in this one, right? Okay.
Yeah.
And you said that was May?
March. Yeah.
Begins with an M. Okay.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Yeah.
And then the women's fiction, what is the title of that? And when should we be looking for that one in 2023?
So the women's fiction is called Through the Snow Globe, because it starts with a snow globe. And that's coming out, I think, September. It's the holiday book.
Wait, September of this year or next year?
2023.
23. Okay.
So next year.
Okay. Want to make sure, our readers know exactly when and what to be on the lookout for them.
Yeah.
Well, Annie, thank you so much for spending some time with us this evening. And our readers can stay on the lookout for that and look forward to asking you some more questions in our after hours Q&A.
Yes, thank you for having me. That was fun.